Federal Ministry of...
Now, the National Economic Council Thursday declared a state of emergency on education as recommended by state governments. And with respect to that, joining us in the studio to talk more on this issue is the Plateau State Governor, Simon Bako Lalong. So you're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
You see, many Nigerians thought that the state of emergency in the education sector that has just been declared would have been done earlier than now, considering the state of the sector for many years now. Yes. So why now that you're declaring a state of emergency in the education sector?
Well, thank you very much. I also agree that it is done very late. For me, it's very, very late. Because I saw that kind of policy before I came in as governor, where state of emergency was declared in my state on education. But when I came in as governor, I saw the greatest state of decay in both infrastructure and even in the administration. Yes, we are up to election. We are moving into elections. This would have come at the beginning of the session. But I will also say it's not late, because the minister came introduce it now for those who will come back, for those who will be governors, so that you know that we concentrate on it. My emphasis is that let us focus on it if it is really the state of emergency for now, because that will also inform the preparation for our budget. Just like we told him yesterday that we needed the minister for planning to also give us a hint of what is contained in the budget for federal government, so that there will be synergy between the federal government and the state in preparation of our budget, so that we now concentrate, since there is this policy of state of emergency in education. Because the revelations he gave were really very threatening. In spite of all federal government is doing, in spite of all the states are doing, we realize that we still have a very long way to go in education. And you know, a state, a nation that does not emphasize in education is doomed to fail in future. So that is why I also agree that yes, the policy is coming, but that would have been done at the beginning. But as we prepare, I'm hoping that it is not for this session again. It is for next session, because we are just preparing our budgets. Politicians are running up for offices. Many people will be there. Many will not come back. Many people will not come back again. And it's not even possible that those who will come back to take over from governors will continue with what we are doing. But for federal government, I think it is good. I don't want to start campaigning for my party, because I know that continuity is there. So if we start now, there will be that continuity with the policy that is being prepared, so that we continue with it in the next session.
Well, Your Excellency, Governor of Plateau State, Good Morning Nigeria has consistently focused on aspects of education and literacy in Nigeria. Yes. As recently as the Teachers' Day celebration, that was a topic we discussed. And concerns have often been expressed with regard to the state and quality of education in Nigeria. Yes. Now that there is a proposal for the declaration of a state of emergency, what would that mean?
Well, the declaration for state of emergency will mean that there is serious emphasis looking back to what is contained now, what is obtained in education. I am a member of a committee on this issue, the committee set up by the federal government on this out-of-school problem, and also the insecurity in schools. You know, there are so many reasons for that. So many, especially when you consider the insecurity in some of the zones where a lot of people are out of schools. And you also consider the emphasis, especially policies of some of the states in respect to education. You will see a budget, an entire budget, and virtually just merely 20% of the budget is focused on education. And when you go to that state, you see the level of decay, you see the standard of education in that place. So without education, I sometimes imagine, if people are not educated, what are you talking about? What are you talking about in future? Even if the infrastructures will be mere useless, it will be a useless thing until you concentrate on that. I think the declaration now is to put everybody on guard, to say that, yes, we've reached a stage where we must emphasize. It is not at this stage, with 2018 in Nigeria, we shouldn't be talking about out-of-school children. We shouldn't be talking about decay in education. We should be talking of moving our education to a stage where we are developing it in line with the current standard and also with going in tune with world standard.
Governor, you've been in power for a while now, so you are talking from the point of experience.
Yes.
In Plateau State.
Yes.
Now, one may be forced to ask this question: what really does this emergency connote, in the sense that what are those the thematic areas of concern in the sector that requires a quantum leap to be able to impact positively? So let's get: is it in the infrastructure? Is it in the quality of teachers? Is it the quality of our curriculum, and what have you?
I think it's all. Most of the things you mentioned. Talking from experience, I was a speaker. I was a speaker of the House of Assembly. And when I was a speaker, sometimes inputs are also made in the House of Assembly. When we see budget, we call them, we tell them, look, what are you doing for education? What are you doing for education? Because at that time, we emphasize, we also have a joint session, because what I introduced that time was that we can't start preparation of budget without the input of the State House of Assembly. It is not always that you take the budget and you dump it to the House to start preparation for passage, and you hear people complaining here and there. So that policy was introduced, and that was to have the House of the Parliament together with the executive moving on areas of emphasis, on areas of importance, especially in education, so that those areas are all encompassed in preparation of the budget. When it comes to the House of Assembly, there were times, periods that we passed the budget in less than a week, because we were all involved from the beginning. So what were we going to argue again? At the time they came with the budget, you take it and you pass it. So when you say state of emergency means that proper attention must be taken. We must concentrate, because there's something wrong. Anything that requires state of emergency means that something is wrong. If you don't do it now, it will be a disaster. So, or in other words, to say that there is a disaster, and that disaster is the level of decay in infrastructure first. You go to some schools at this stage, I saw it on NTA too, people are still sitting on grounds. And also considering the level of teachers. Recently, I had to absorb some teachers who were moved out. In my state, I came inherited 6 months of strike from teachers. Lack of even writing work. They were not writing work. So imagine in a government of that nature, a governor will sit down and there are no schools going on, and he will say there is achievement in your state. What kind of achievement are you talking about? We usually prepare achievements for the future, not only for the present. So you see, there is that infrastructural decay. There's also a level of teachers. At a point, people who are teaching with the grade 2. People who are teaching with grade 2, gone are the days. And so emphasis was made that even for primary school teachers, we must possess NCE, a minimum of NCE. So we must start from that NCE. We must start from that NCE. And then also I've spoken about infrastructure, and also the level of teachers, and also the motivation. The motivation for teachers. You may have the best teachers, but if there is no motivation, they will not teach well. They will not teach well. And so at every rate, my emphasis is that even on quarterly basis, we should begin to bring out, and to bring the Federal Ministry of Education should begin to bring out an assessment of all the states in respect to education. Because when you talk about state of emergency and you leave the states without assessment, bring out the assessment. Let the whole world know that this is what is done in every state. Let the public, let those states also know that this is what is done in respect to education. By the time they do it, they will focus on that. We should not all talk about infrastructure. This infrastructure will also be knowledge infrastructure, like somebody will say stomach infrastructure. We must also talk about knowledge infrastructure. And that infrastructure, knowledge infrastructure, is very, very important, because Nigeria of today, we're expecting Nigeria to be better tomorrow. And that is the future we must start preparing.
All right, Mr. Governor, a state of emergency, in addition to what you've just indicated, by way of demanding priority attention,
Yes.
implies extraordinary measures
Yes.
to achieve the desired objective. Some of the items you have ticked off in responding to the question by my colleague, those items relate to the supply side of education, infrastructure, quality of teachers, motivation of teachers.
Yes.
What is needed to be done on the demand side? Because earlier you referenced out-of-school children, which is a problematic issue for us in the country. In the past, we were hovering around 10.5 million, but on Good Morning Nigeria, we've been told that now it's about 13.5 million. So what will be done in terms of extraordinary measures to spike demand for education?
Well, I think it's been done already. This administration came up with the school feeding. School feeding is one of it. In school feeding now, you go to many states, you find people who are out of school rushing back to school. I tested it in my state. Although my state is not one that is lacking in terms of out of school, the standard is not too poor. But we introduced that when it was introduced in my state. And by President Muhammad Buhari. Go to many states and see. I had an experience where a child was sick and the parent said the child should go to hospital, sit and go to hospital. The child refused. They were waiting for him to go to hospital, took it back. Before they went, the child was out. They were looking for him. That child ran to school. They said, instead of going to hospital, he said, no, I want to go to school because I don't want to miss my meal in the school. So that way, we got a lot of encouragement. So this school feeding is helping us seriously to bring back the kids. In a state like Plateau, I'm also trying to blend it with motivation for the missionary schools or public schools, because sometimes what you lack private schools, what you lack in public schools, you also augment it with motivations for public schools. Yes, public schools must also be there, because for those who can afford it, private schools will be there for those who can afford it. But you also have to create a standard, like we have in my state now, not even improving on infrastructure and also motivation for teachers. We've gone ahead. Right now, constructions are going on for schools. I think by the time we get to next year, the best schools will come up, both in infrastructure and standard. We'll put it as model schools in each local government, so that it will compete with even private schools at a lower rate. I think that will also help for those who cannot afford it. But for private schools, we are giving them motivation. We've gone in to pay their grants that were left 13 years in my state. 13 years. It was just last week. I brought out everything and I said, for 13 years, no grants to private schools. Now I've computed it and I said all the grants will be paid for 13 years. That way you are motivating the private schools in competition with also the public schools. So those are things that we need to encourage. But I must say that yes, the declaration is coming down, but that is not to say I am a member of the ruling government. I know that a lot has been done. I know the president's mind in respect to education.
All right, Governor Lalong, thank you very much indeed for your contribution so far. But let me ask you this question. You know, education is on the concurrent list. And is this a constitutional structure affecting the quality of education in Nigeria, given the fact that the state and federal government both have rights to apply any kind of educational policy? Now, you mentioned private schools and giving them grants, accepted. Now, the issue of private schools, should also be part of the package of this emergency, because private schools have sprung up in many parts of the country, yes, some of which were also run by quacks. Yes. And this also, contributes. So is this emergency that has been declared in this sector going to be holistically, look at the educational structure in Nigeria?
Yes, from the roadmap given by the Minister for Education, when he addressed us yesterday, it's all encompassing. I think so many things are done there. When he gave us, in fact, the time was even too long in presentation that he made a summary. So what we said is that, look, this is very, very important. Give us the copies of this. We need to go back again, address the issue at the neck, because he was making the presentation, and to us the time was even too short to make that presentation, and also the attention, because not many of the governors were not there, represented by deputies, and of course many of them are on their way out. Many of them are on their way out because they've exhausted their second tenure. But what you mentioned is exactly what is contained in the document that he presented. It's a very voluminous document, and that I was very happy because I listened attentively, and I said, my emphasis always is on education. I came from a village. If not for education, I would not have gone to this level to even become a governor. I went to public schools. Although at that time our own public schools were all manned by missionaries, by the Catholic missionaries.
What will be the focus, once again, of the state of emergency? Now, when you talked about the school feeding program as part of the ways of boosting the demand side for education, that, of course, will be dealing with the primary level.
Yes.
So what does the state of emergency envisage with regard to secondary and tertiary education?
Well, like I said, I can't remember all the things in the document, but many of it, all of them are contained in it. For instance, what I left out was this UBEC. In the past, in terms of infrastructure, states had the liberty to either assess UBEC or not to assess UBEC. But when the last tranche of the Party Club came, I like what the federal government did. What they said is that, yes, you have Party Club, but what about education? For emphasis on education, you are also supposed to access the UBEC funds, put in your grants for the purpose of developing the infrastructure. But many states could not do for different reasons. Some of them, like my own state, the governor had already taken the money and is the subject of investigation now, taking a lot of it for about 4 billion, that's 4 years. 4 years statutory grant for the state, and then that means that we are owed, we are indebted to UBEC for about 4 billion, and again, because of that, we are paying the debt instead of accessing another fund. But when this issue came, what they said is that if you are indebted, first of all, you must pay the debts. They deducted directly from that debt. And again, if you had not accessed your funds for your own portion of the grant, they will take it. So I'm very happy today. I'm very happy because I had 4 billion they took directly, then added another 4 billion as their own counterpart fund.
I'm wondering, very briefly, because we don't have enough time left for this segment of our conversation. You're talking about UBEC, and observers are of the opinion that the mismanagement of the State Universal Basic Education Board is one of the reasons primarily responsible for the deleterious state of education we find in the country, particularly at the levels that SUBEB are supposed to superintend. What's your thought?
Well, the anti-corruption agencies are there. What we do is to strengthen the anti-corruption agencies and also focus. That's why I said, when you are talking of it, you are not also talking about, you are also ignoring the fact that there's corruption everywhere. And corruption was part of the reasons for the decay in infrastructure and also administration of education in Nigeria.
All right, sir. Thank you very much indeed for your insight on this very, very important topic, declaring of a